The woman known as Madison had a taste for the thrill of the hunt. Her prey, married men. Her weapon of choice, a cocktail of beauty, charm, and cunning that could make the most stoic of hearts quiver. Madison was a master of her craft, a predator in the guise of a seductress. Her latest target, a man named Charles, had stumbled into her web quite by accident. He was a successful businessman, a loving husband, and a devoted father. Yet like many before him, he had succumbed to the siren call of temptation that whispered sweet nothings into his ear at every lonely business trip. Madison had spotted him at a high-class hotel bar, his wedding band glinting under the soft amber lights as he nursed a whiskey. She had approached him with a smile that could melt ice, and by the end of the evening she had his hotel room key. Their affair was a whirlwind of passion and deceit. Madison played the part of the eager mistress to perfection, fulfilling Charles's every desire while simultaneously recording every intimate moment on a hidden camera she had planted in the room. His moans of pleasure were captured alongside the damning evidence of his infidelity. Each meeting grew more intense, each touch more electric, and each lie he told his wife grew more elaborate. Madison reveled in the power she had over him, the way his eyes searched hers for understanding and acceptance even as he knew he didn't deserve it. As the weeks turned into months, Madison grew tired of the game. The thrill of the hunt had worn off, and she craved the sweet victory of the kill. She knew the time had come to spring her trap. One evening, after a particularly steamy rendezvous, Madison waited for Charles to shower before she made her move. She donned a sheer black negligee that clung to her curvaceous body like a second skin. The fabric shimmered with every step she took, a silent declaration of her intentions. As he emerged from the bathroom, towel draped and unsuspecting, Madison turned to face him with a cold, calculated smile. She held up her phone, the screen displaying a montage of their most compromising moments. "It's been fun, Charles," she purred, "but now it's time for you to pay the piper." The color drained from his face as he stared at the incriminating evidence. He knew he was caught, his world crumbling around him like a sandcastle before the tide. "What do you want?" he managed to choke out, his voice trembling. "Money," she replied simply. "Lots of it." Her demands grew with each passing day. Madison had an insatiable appetite for wealth, and Charles's bank account was the perfect meal ticket. He paid her off in installments, each one more substantial than the last, hoping against hope that she would be satisfied and let him go. But Madison had no intention of letting him off the hook. She had tasted the sweet nectar of power, and she wanted more. With each payment, she tightened her grip on him, her eyes gleaming with the promise of ruin. The transactions grew more sophisticated as they progressed. Cash was too risky, too traceable. Instead, Madison demanded wire transfers to an offshore account that she had set up under a pseudonym. She knew that once the money was in her hands, it was as good as invisible. The guilt ate away at Charles like a cancer. He grew distant from his wife, unable to look her in the eye without seeing the shadows of his own deceit. His work suffered, his appetite dwindled, and he became a mere shadow of the man he once was. The stress of his double life was taking its toll, and Madison reveled in his suffering. But Madison had made a grave mistake. In her quest for power and riches, she had underestimated the depths of Charles's desperation. As the months turned into a year, and the payments grew more exorbitant, he grew more and more unstable. He knew he could never escape her clutches unless he took drastic action. One evening, after receiving another demand from Madison, Charles sat at his desk, his hand shaking as he stared at the wire transfer confirmation on his computer screen. The weight of his situation crushed him, and he knew that he could bear it no longer. He had to find a way to break free from her grip before he lost everything. His thoughts grew darker, more sinister as the night progressed. He had been a caged animal, and now he was ready to fight back. His mind raced with thoughts of vengeance, his heart pumping with a newfound resolve. He knew that if he didn't take control, he would be destroyed. The plan formed slowly in his mind, a twisted web of deceit that mirrored Madison's own tactics. He would give her what she wanted, but on his terms. He would make her think she had won, lull her into a false sense of security, and then he would strike. The next time they met, Madison could sense the change in him. His eyes were no longer filled with fear, but with something else, something colder, something more dangerous. She was used to seeing men beg for her mercy, but the look in Charles's eyes was unfamiliar, almost predatory. He handed her the envelope filled with cash, and she took it with a smug smile. As she counted the bills, he leaned in and whispered, "I have a surprise for you, Madison." Her heart raced with excitement, her eyes gleaming with greed. "Oh, really?" she purred. "What could it possibly be?" "Meet me at the same place tomorrow night," he said, "and wear something special. This will be our final rendezvous." Madison felt a thrill of anticipation, her mind racing with thoughts of what could be in store for her. Could it be more money? A declaration of love? Or perhaps something more sinister? She didn't care, as long as it meant more power and more money. The following night, Madison arrived at the hotel, dressed in the most expensive lingerie she owned. She found the door to the room unlocked and slipped inside, her heart racing. The lights were dim, and the air was thick with the scent of expensive cologne. She could hear the faint sound of music playing from the other room. As she moved closer to the bed, she saw a figure lying on the sheets, naked and unmoving. She approached, her breath catching in her throat. It was Charles, but he was not alone. The sight that greeted her was one of horror, his lifeless body, a bullet wound in his forehead, a crimson halo staining the pillow beneath him. Panic surged through her as she realized the gravity of the situation. He had killed himself, leaving behind a note that confessed everything to his wife, detailing the affair and the blackmail that had led to his demise. Madison's eyes widened with terror as she understood the magnitude of her mistake. But there was more. The room was surrounded by cameras, all pointed at the bed, all recording. The final act of Charles's twisted play had been to ensure that Madison's face was captured in the most compromising position possible. The door to the hotel room burst open, and in strode a group of burly men. Madison recognized them as Charles's associates, men who had always greeted her with a wary eye. They had been watching her, waiting for the perfect moment to pounce. They grabbed her, their grip like iron, and dragged her to the bedside. One of them slapped a USB drive into her hand. "This is for you," he sneered. "A little parting gift from Charlie." Madison's hand trembled as she inserted the drive into her laptop. The screen filled with the image of her standing over Charles's lifeless body, the cash from the envelope scattered across the bed like a twisted bouquet of lies. The video had been edited to make it look as though she had been the one to pull the trigger. The men laughed cruelly as they watched her expression turn from shock to horror. They had known about the affair, about the blackmail. They had been waiting for the right moment to take her down. And now that moment had arrived. The leader of the group leaned in close, his breath hot and rancid on her neck. "You see, Madison, Charlie had a plan of his own.